Tom, thanks very much for joining us. You're obviously focused at JLL there on research and strategy in EMEA, and obviously following the market closely. Um, as we come out of the main restrictions here in the UK, how do you see this in terms of any continuing influence on the future of work, and particularly office-based work?
Yes, I mean, it's been a really active debate over the last 18 months as companies have had to really adapt and redress their policies and their focus really dynamically over the last 18 months. I think right now what we're hearing and what we're seeing from the data is that we are seeing economic activity increase. We're seeing some positive signs in terms of those high frequency mobility indicators, and we're getting a sense that there's an increasing appetite for workers to really get back into the office environment and to start to kind of create a bit more of a mix in their working arrangements. The work from home and the kind of forced work from home has been tough on quite a lot of cohorts. I mean, we've seen that the latest workforce data we see is that, you know, particularly that kind of younger demographic have struggled, those perhaps in shared living arrangements, not with the space to really work comfortably and productively from home. Also, working parents trying to juggle a whole manner of things, and those with caregiving responsibilities. So I think it's important to recognise it's been a very difficult period for many in terms of work, and that they're looking very much towards a different dynamic going forward, and perhaps return to some of that office environment. That's definitely what we're seeing. In fact, 70% of the respondents that we see are looking forward to returning to a safe environment within the office, and point to it as a really important location for driving collaboration, innovation, socialising, connecting with colleagues, and a lot of those activities that will help drive growth as we return to a more growth focused environment and the recovery really accelerates, which we anticipate in the second half of this year.
There's also been a big focus on sustainability over the pandemic, Tom. Has this change been reflected in the view of occupiers?
Yeah, and in some ways, sadly, COVID really has taken and diverted attention away from what was due to be a really central theme of occupier and wider business focus last year. But that has really been a temporary blip, because what we're seeing is that the proportion of occupiers adopting net zero carbon targets is expected to more than double between now and 2025. So we're seeing an ever increasing number of commitments made at a corporate level, and that will only accelerate as we move towards COP26 later in the year in Glasgow. And I think what we're seeing, in addition to the commitments that are being made, we're now seeing a real focus from occupiers about linking those objectives and those aspirations to improve sustainability credentials and achieve net zero carbon, really with the real estate strategy. And that is a complex and multifaceted thing to do. But we've seen an incredible amount of focus now on really designing strategies and beginning to implement the specific steps required to achieve those sorts of commitments. Because of course, real estate is up to 40% of carbon emissions. So for any corporate organisation looking to achieve, a net zero carbon commitment, they're going to need to really take a root and branch review of their real estate, really from the design, the construction, the acquisition, across the entire life cycle, and start to implement some specific actions that will help them meet those targets. So it's a really important topic of conversation for us at the moment. We would note that many corporate action plans are still in nascency, that there's a recognition now, 83% say the link between corporate real estate and sustainability is a board level agenda. So this is not just a technical specialist focus. This is right at the heart of corporate board discussion, and carbon emission is really a key part of that. 56% now say carbon emission reduction is specifically addressed as part of their corporate real estate strategy. But there's a lot of work to do, and I think a lot of technical work to understand really where are the priorities within corporate real estate portfolios, to understand where those specific areas and risks are, and how those risks need to be mitigated. So identifying the assets with a high carbon impact and mitigating those risks, and then also really prioritizing those building credentials and ensuring that those external credentials are being leveraged really to kind of test and then underwrite the positive decisions that are being made around the environmental impact and the wider sustainability impact of an asset. So again, from the occupier side, it's really important, but also from the investor side. 48% of investors say they're already seeking kind of LEED or BREEAM certification when building, buying, or leasing, but that's expected to increase to 77% by 2025. So, the entire industry really making big steps forward to try and address some of these huge challenges, but also opportunities for our industry really to make a more positive impact.
We mentioned obviously the future of work, Tom. Do you think changes there are potentially going to influence this drive for greater sustainability? What's your sense of that?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting dynamic. And I think it's still early to say what the post-pandemic impact on work will be in totality. I think what some of the trends we're seeing, point to some positive steps there. I think there's clearly a greater awareness. If we take sustainability as a whole, health and well-being is right at the heart of the agenda, both from the employee perspective and from the corporate perspective. So, that we expect to be a real legacy of the pandemic, integrating a more health and well-being focused agenda, and then also integrating specific steps in terms of services and amenities within the built environment to meet those needs. That's going to be really important as we go forward. So I think that will be a really lasting change. I think other aspects, we would expect a greater mix in terms of work from anywhere as we move forward. So there is clearly an appetite to work in a more flexible way as we go forward. And I think if that's managed in the right way, we may see some potential kind of commute reduction. We may see some reduction in business travel. Those are still being seen at the moment. Now, whether those last, time will tell. But I think more broadly, it's almost separate to COVID and the kind of impact that that's had. We've got a cast iron commitment now across industries and sectors to really putting a clear plan in place to achieve a more sustainable kind of future for organisations. And that will naturally, that's being very supported by the new generation coming into the workplace as a clear sign that employees, as well as wider societal pressure, will be the real drivers of this. This is beyond just greenwashing now. This is actually about attracting and retaining the talent that will drive organisations over the next 5 to 10 years and meeting their expectations of what an organisation has to do in terms of its carbon footprint, and also the work environment that it creates and the impact that has. So I think there are a whole host of issues that are playing in here that will push and support that more positive agenda as we look ahead.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the dynamics of the future of work, ESG, sustainability and impact influence the market going forward. Thanks very much for joining us, Tom.
Thanks a lot.